Hey, this is Rod Cleef, and you are listening to the Mailbox Money Show with Bronson Hill.
Hey, it's Bronson. Wanted to share about this episode. I think you're going to love this. This is Chaz Wolfe, a friend of mine. And, it is so critical to look at what your mindset is and the limitations in your own mindset. I kept coming up against this brick wall when I would get to, somewhere I'd self-sabotage or I'd get in the room with amazing people and I wasn't able to kind of bust through the next level. But what I've learned is mindset is huge, and getting around people that are really at the next level can really help me get to the next level as well. Cause I see them do it. And I think, man, I could do that. And it doesn't matter if it's in the area of your business, it could be your personal life, it could be in investing, it could be anything. I've seen people that, are not in business at all, and they've just found these limiting beliefs that really get in the way. So you're going to love this interview. Chaz Wolfe, he has some, I'm going to get into his bio here in a minute, but just some amazing stuff. You're going to love to hear what he has to share about mindset and how to grow personally. Awesome. I'm really excited for this interview of the Mailbox Money Show. And it basically is about scaling a business to nine figures. So nine figures is a lot of zeros behind a one or a two or a five or whatever it is. And my guest today, Chaz Wolfe, has done this, has helped people do this. And he really is a business coach. He has a mastermind called Gathering the Kings. He has also a podcast called Gathering the Kings. And he's just been really successful at really gathering great people together. And there's that quote by Jim Rohn: you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow, you've got to get in the room with people that are at the next level. And so I just have a lot of admiration for him. He was on his podcast recently. Wanted to have him on my show. So Chaz, how you doing today? Welcome, man.
Bronson, man, I appreciate the opportunity. Some of those things were extremely kind, and I hope to be a blessing to your audience.
You shared a kind of a curious detail. I just got back from a trip to New Zealand recently, just a few days ago, and had a great time. And you said you were there, and you said you used to be a not semi pro, but you were playing ball. You're a basketball player. You kind of have the James Harden look going on. So you were a guard shooting, but things have shifted. So why don't you give people a little bit just of your background, what you do, and talk about scaling businesses to nine figures. Let's get started.
Yeah, well, first off, everything that I feel like I've given you turned it into this amazing. Either you've said something like I need to have you talk about all the stuff, because it morphs into more. It's fantastic.
I'll be your hype man. You give me more information, I'll just find a way to hype you up. So
exactly. Yeah, playing some ball in Australia and New Zealand was fun, but that was long time ago, and definitely not semi-pro, not even close. But appreciate the opportunity there. Yeah, in all seriousness, I'm glad to be here because yes, I've grown multiple businesses, and we do have a group now. It's not my only company, but it is one of my companies that I'm able to help facilitate a room of winners. And so I'm excited to talk about that. But I think that the scaling process that you talk about in investing is the same in business. And so we're probably going to talk about a lot of the same mindset and principles that work, whether it's in real estate or investing or in business scaling.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. If you have scaled a business, or you just have a business, or you want to have a business, I think it's important to think about the growth of it. I heard somebody say that 95% of businesses in the U.S. Actually, I'll get the number wrong. I think maybe it's 80% of businesses. There's a certain percentage that only have just the entrepreneur and no one else. There's only the person operating the business. So a lot of people have a business, they really just have a job. And so then there's people that have developed very large businesses. So I really, we have four or five employees now, and it's just, learning about business and scaling business. And even if you're a passive investor, how to scale your life. If you're looking to kind of like grow your wealth without taking more of your time, you're going to have to find people that you trust. You're going to have to build a team around you that you can scale, because if you want to scale your life and your mindset, you have to do that. So talk to us a little bit about scaling and kind of what that process looks like and where most people get it wrong.
Yeah, well, that's a really big question. So I would say first off that any sort of growth is going to happen inside of either a mess or some sort of a system. And so I think that you've probably experienced that in investing. It can be a mess, or it can be predictable. And somewhere in the middle there, you try to, bounce back between these walls of predictability and a mess. And as entrepreneurs, we kind of teeter that line probably more than we should. But the two things that come to my mind that we talk about quite a bit with our mastermind clients is, in order to have back that time, or to create a scaling business where you have a system and people, it's just really those two things: process and people. And you kind of hinted at it for a second there, but it doesn't matter if you're a seven-figure business at $1 million, which is still a huge opportunity. I mean, that's less than 10% of all businesses do that. And you've got a team of 4 to 15. that takes a certain process, and then there's processes that those folks follow inside of that. And so we talk a lot about hiring. We have a tool that we use that helps kind of filter people that we get really, really intentional with. And so I think that there's like kind of several nuances here to your really big question, but it's people and process, and then we can break those things down in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. So in your group, again, I'm always looking to look for, best practices of high achievers, because there's things that you just hear somebody say something like, oh man, that's amazing. I got to try that. And I work it in my business, or I work it in my personal life. And now in my personal life, like I do cold plunging, athletic training where I run Spartan races and run 20 miles, and I do all this stuff, and I try to eat really well. And it's just in my personal life, but I know in business as well, there's a lot of things and processes that we've created. I know there's things like Traction, which is a book that talks about EOS, which is basically how you create processes. And so if someone is an engineer or a pilot, typically have checklists and things like this. But what have you noticed from people that when it comes to processes that people have done that are very successful and have really scaled up?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm going to second your Traction recommendation, followed by Rocket Fuel for the entrepreneur. It describes EOS and that mindset. We use that in our companies, and then several of our clients do. It's not a have to, but you got to follow something. And if you're not following something, you're still following a mess. And so I would just suggest that maybe you create what you're following as opposed to following what you're creating.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that to say that what's worked well inside of like technical process, it's like you said, it's a checklist, it's something that you can give to someone else, and then they can do that either job or that initiative, whatever it is that you're handing them, well, without immediate or direct day-to-day micromanagement. Of course, still support, still coaching, still training, but the idea here is to be able to hand someone a task or a project, and for them to be able to go complete it with what you've given them. And then that might be mixed with their personality, though, because I can hand certain things to a personality. We use the culture index. So I can hand something to a craftsman, and their response to what I'm handing to them, if it's half baked, is going to be completely different than if I hand, an architect, the profile architect, because that architect's going to take that half baked idea that I give to them as the visionary, and they're going to be like, hey, I don't even actually want the rest of your thoughts. I just want the outline. I'm going to go create the system. That craftsman needs the system. The craftsman is who the architect hands it to. And so if you know these things, then I know that my number two is not going to be a craftsman. I'm not going to hand this half-baked idea as a visionary to a craftsman, because they need a lot more detail and a lot more direction. They don't have as much autonomy or need for autonomy. But most likely the person that I have handed it to, my integrator using EOS language, is going to be this architect profile or something similar to that, where they can see the vision, they can receive the vision because they can still see it, but then they can also go implement. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And I've read the book Rocket Fuel too. Anybody who has a business, or even I think even in like a marriage relationship or any sort of like business relationship, having a visionary and an integrator is awesome. And to break that down, visionary is somebody who can see the vision, has all these ideas, and wants to create certain things. But an integrator is actually the one who will actually do it. And so in our business, I have an amazing integrator who's been really helpful, just to kind of say, hey, let's create this, let's create the processes, and I just kind of tell her what I need and what we want, and we work together on it. And it's been awesome, right? And so and a lot of great businesses have that visionary and integrator type relationship. And then again, I think even too about, relationship, it can be really valuable. Let's say you have a couple and you've got, let's say one is really great in, like a romantic relationship. One's really great at vision and the other's great at operating. It's great to kind of divide and just figure out if you're exactly the same, and it's not always going to work as well because you're going to butt heads. But if it's like, oh, we do different things, we have different roles here, it can be really helpful. And that can be kind of fluid, I think too. Let's talk a little bit about mindset here, because I think this is something that is applicable really to anyone. But what are, maybe for you personally, can you share maybe an example of a limiting belief that you've had that you've been able to work through, or something? Because I know you've been really successful at scaling. And tell us a little bit to your bit. What are you have multiple businesses? What genre is the business, or that you've done personally as well?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I'll get to the limiting belief here in a second. To answer your second question there, I've got a portfolio of companies. We're in retail, franchising. I've got some real estate companies. We talked about that on the show briefly, obviously, as I was asking you questions. Short-term, long-term, multifamily a little bit. And we've got some home remodeling in our portfolio. And then, of course, just the stuff with the mastermind. I've got other investments that are super passive, totally minority in those, but that's all over the place, from hospitality to medical to, again, short-term rentals in different parts of the country, all that kind of fun stuff. Management, short-term rental management on that. But anyway, all that to say that mindset, what is a limiting belief that I overcame? I would say probably earlier this year, I was working through kind of the tail end of what it as a learned extrovert, as I like to say. Introverts like to stay kind of under the radar. And I would much rather go do the thing. So actually, to take it back even further, in Rocket Fuel, it has you take a survey, right? So you're either integrator or you're visionary, or visionary integrator. And he says in there's less than 5% of people who score both. Remember that?
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I scored 98% as a visionary, 95% as an integrator. And so that the entire journey that I've had in business has been creating this massive vision, and then I'm just push, which means that I've done a lot myself for too long, right? Yeah. And I wasn't able to hand it off like you have in your business. Obviously, I do that now, and I've created multiple teams, but that was a thing early on. And so part of that, though, was I could just go do, and I could be behind the scenes, and I could create the success. I'm just a doer, just straight doer. I create the vision, and then I'll go do it, and I'll probably get it done fast. But there was a limiting belief, especially around being a believer, that there's this money and fame thing tied to, like, oh, I don't know. I don't struggle with making money and the root of evil being money. That's not what the root of evil is. And I've worked through that. We're good. The limiting belief, though, was about the fame, was about the attention. And as being an introvert, is like, I really don't want it. Yeah. Really, I really don't want to be known. But knowing the impact that I've already had on so many other people, and that sounds a little bit arrogant already, but it's like, no, these are God-given things that I genuinely believe that He's put in me, and they've overflown out of me into others. And then they're like, I mean, I had a client just here in Kansas City a couple of weeks ago. He brings a Mont Blanc pin and is wanting to, like, take me out. I'm like, no, I'm trying to take you out. You're here in my town. He's like, dude, you've changed my life. You've changed my relationships. You've changed the trajectory of my entire family. And when you have that, it's no longer about, like, look what I can do for others. It's look what God can do through me. And now I started tapping on I need more people to know me. So I had to kind of come full front with fame and money. Yeah. And what does that mean for me as a believer? And I had to work through going, okay, like, no, I actually do desire to be famous. But the way I write it on my board is this: I need help from you, God, to quote unquote make me famous. But I say, like David, with humility, because he says in the Bible, he says, I'll make you famous, David. I'll raise you up. And that's exactly what I hope. When I hope, that's the wrong word. That is what is happening and it has been from the beginning. There's always been a hand of favor, but I've always been diligent in the doing. It's faith and the workings, the doing matched together that makes it work. And we know this, from Scripture.
Yeah, but no, it's a good point too. I think it's really good for anybody who wants to make a difference in the world. And I've wrestled with that too. I think I wouldn't say I was introverted, but I would say I was more shy, or just, who am I to, kind of the imposter syndrome? Who am I to be somebody that's successful or doing podcasts and raising millions of dollars, or just putting yourself out there saying, like, hey, I'm going to help people in this way. And it feels very vulnerable. I mean, anytime you're creative, Brené Brown talks about the creative process is very vulnerable. And when you're doing this, you are a creative, you're creating content, you're creating things, and most people don't. It's so easy. And I think in our world, there are so many cheap seats where people just sit in the stands and they just start, flinging insults and whatever. And online is just where people do. They consume everything. But when you're actually, it's the Teddy Roosevelt quote, right? It's the man who's actually in the arena, who actually, if he does well, then he knows great victory. But if not, if he's defeated, then at least he's defeated while daring greatly. And I want to be that kind of person. So I really admire that you've done that and you're doing that. And it's amazing. I don't know if you feel this same way, Chaz, but like one success kind of leads to another. So once you kind of do something, you're like, oh, well, I did that and that went well, whatever. And you can kind of pull from different things. And then you realize you have all these, like, you can kind of gather confidence from, like, all these different things you've done to really help grow. So, so when it comes to, like, I guess let's talk about that with entrepreneurs, or just with successful people that you've seen. I'm sure limiting beliefs are a part of kind of what you help them to work with, because they'll say, like, hey, well, I've got, an employer, I'm a solo practitioner, or I'm a dentist, or like, but they're trying to scale up, but just they can't quite get up, or maybe they self-sabotage when they get to a certain level. What are some things that you found to be helpful to come up against limiting beliefs for some of these entrepreneurs?
Yeah, well, so first off, you have to identify them, and even going back to the example that you just were giving, after you take action, to whatever degree, you build confidence, which then gets you some result, and then it gets you more excited about doing more action. And so it's like this chicken and egg concept that a lot of people kind of go back and forth on: is is it the belief or is it the action? And actually, I just had a guy on my show just a couple of weeks ago talking about this, and he and I came into an alignment. It's like, absolutely, I agree with you. We talked about it for extensively, but it's like, you can take action. And I did this in sales. I'm 21 years old, making cold calls, and it's like, just make calls, and something then happens. And so some people believe that's like, well, it's action first, then by taking action, I then gain belief or confidence.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, wait a second. No, actually, by me picking up the phone repeatedly, I have a belief that something's going to happen. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made the calls, right? So it always starts with belief. And so this framework that we went through on the show was beliefs, behavior, results. And everybody wants the results, right? That's what we're talking about. I want the passive income, Bronson. Give me the mailbox money, right? Well, what behaviors give me the mailbox money? Well, buying real estate, investing in alternative deals, like all the things that you talk about here on your show, scaling businesses, all that can fit in here as far as ways to be able to grow wealth. Okay, cool. But how do I grow wealth? Well, I have to think a certain way about money, that it comes to me freely. I have to be able to believe that there's plenty out there for you and for me. When you say that you're raising millions, I don't just sulk away and go, oh, Bronson got it all. Like, there has to be beliefs around what it is that I actually think can happen. Even if I don't believe yet, there's this beautiful thing that Napoleon Hill told us about in Think and Grow Rich called autosuggestion. And I just simply say it to myself until I believe it. And then I just keep doing it and saying it now that I do believe it. And it's like this mixture. Napoleon Hill calls the faith, or the belief factor, the eternal elixir. It's the magic. It's the potion. It's like, I feed it to myself. I'll read my goals every single day until I believe. Then when I have the belief, then that's like the actual juice that I go now with the action and my belief. Now things start to happen. Now I have a behavior that's giving me results. Now I have confidence. Now I go back to the behaviors and I keep doing them over and over. I'm saying no to the bad stuff. I'm saying yes to the good stuff. I keep making good decisions. And like you said, it's a compounding effect.
Yeah. There's so much what you said I love. And this is absolutely changed my life. So I used to think, affirmations, all this it just felt kind of like mumbo jumbo. But when you do it, it actually changes your life. And going back to what you first said, I really believe life has an action bias, meaning if you just start taking actions towards your goal, you will figure it out and you'll get there. Because what'll happen is you'll do it and you'll make calls, you do whatever the thing is, or you'll go, if you're an investor and you want to start doing passive income, you'll go to meetups, you kind of learn, okay, this deal didn't work out. I didn't like this person, or I really like this. I'm going to double down here. And so in the process of taking action, you'll figure it out, right? So if you just keep kind of like, I like someone who is like an action person who doesn't know a whole lot, but just takes action, versus somebody who has great ideas and great theory, the action person will always win as long as they take the actions and then they keep reflecting on what's working and what's not working. So some people just keep taking action and they don't change anything.
And never change anything.
But they've got to keep learning and growing. But what you said as well about goals, I have goals each year. Actually, it's kind of the end of the year, so I'm getting ready to write some new goals for next year. And I look at every single one of my goals this year. I made either completed them or I made progress on them because I read them every morning. And I also do the affirmations. And I remember, like, this is just a personal level. I went through a divorce, 7 years ago. And I remember I felt at a time where I had no confidence, no personal confidence. I just felt like no self-confidence. And so I started writing affirmations around that. Like, I'm a confident person. I love myself. It sounds a little cheesy to say like a podcast, but it took a year or two, and I really started to it became who I was. It came from inside. And so it's like a meditation. You also said you're a person of faith. And it's like when you meditate on truth, it begins to change who you are. And that's how I think people change. I mean, can you respond to that, or just anything else that you found people, can grow 10X, and how they change their mindset to get there?
Yeah, there's two things. I want to say one quick thing about the affirmations. And really, someone might be confused on what we're talking about here. I'm going to go into in depth, just a hair in a second. But those little one-word phrases or one-sentence phrases that we can feed to ourselves, I do that with my kids, man. And we've done that since they were like 2. As soon as they could start talking, put them in front of the mirror and, I am bold, I am strong, God loves me, I love people. Like, just just declaring over themselves. And I tell you what, like, I have not had a guest here at my house that has not commented on not only just how well behaved, but how articulate and how communicative and how engaging my 10 and 7 and 4-year-old are, even though my 4-year-old is still a little dude and likes to run around and be a boy, but it remains the same. Okay. Now back over on the other side, the thing that really 10X's or 100X's everything is when you believe. And so let's dive into this a little bit more. It's not just reading it to yourself every single day that you're a good person or that you, whatever, like that's the beginning piece of it. But at some point, you have to be able to get it down in your soul. And what that looks like is your subconscious starting to act on your behalf. Okay. So 95% of our actions are subconscious or unconscious, meaning that you are drifting through life unless you're not. So you're either drifting or you're intentional. There is no in between. And if you are intentional, what that means is that you are feeding to yourself consciously so that your subconscious eventually grabs a hold of it. The only way that it can grab a hold of it is as if you believe it. So I can read to myself every day that I'm confident. But Bronson, there were days when you read that to yourself and you didn't feel confident.
Exactly.
Right. But you said it to yourself long enough to where you started to believe it. And I'll just prove a fact here. If you're listening to the show right now and you aren't sure just by repeating something over and over and over, if you will start to believe it, it's called the news.
Yeah.
Do I need to say anything more? Okay. So if something, it's a fact. If something is repeated over and over and over, fact or true or false, you will begin to believe it if you hear it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. This is a fact. Okay. Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich, chapter 3. Now, what we can do with that is that this is a tool now. I can feed myself what I want, even if I don't believe it, until I believe it. And then once I believe it, then that's the juice. It's like now my subconscious is getting it. And like you said, things just start to kind of happen. Christians, we call it favor because guess what? I'm connected. He starts working on my behalf, it's subconsciously, I start paying attention to little things, right? Like you're talking about being on the show. I'm being on your show. Like that would have never happened if you didn't create your show and I didn't create my show. And we can reverse engineer this thing all the way back to, I don't know where this thing is going to go or what value this has for you or me. But guess what? Our subconscious right now got us here. Something greater is going to happen. At least that's my belief. Right.
That's great. No, you're 100% right. There's a really good, if anybody's read, there's a number of books, but there's one, The Gap and the Gain. There's 10X is easier than 2X. And it just gets in this idea. Even Benjamin Hardy talks about this idea, your future self now, like the future self 5 or 10 years from now, will have a different set of beliefs and in a way is a different person than we are right now. Now, some people, it doesn't change much, it kind of just goes where it goes, but you can choose like, where do I want to be in 5 years? And one speaker I love talks about, if you look at, where your life is going to be in 5 years, pay attention to what you're speaking right now. Because if you're speaking things that are like amazing, awesome beliefs and positivity and growth, and I'm going to do this and this is going to happen and whatever. And some of the stuff is like, some of my goals I read, they're so big and ridiculous that like, I mean, before I could almost read them with a straight face, like how much money and what am I going to do? Whatever. But like, as you do it, it does start to reprogram your mind. I agree too. There's people that I actually run like a men's group on Tuesday nights through church. And, a lot of guys we know, like there's things of faith, and we don't really talk as much about faith on this show, but there's things of faith that people, I know God loves me. I know that I'm forgiven. I know these things, but I don't feel it in my heart. And that's what kind of you were talking about. And the only way to get it in your heart is you have to meditate on it, right? You've got to like,
that's right.
Well, I know God, and you just at a daily, ongoing, regular basis. And so I love that. I think it's really, really applicable. Let's talk for a minute. I want to talk about a couple more things. I know you have a mastermind that you do. I'm a part of a few masterminds. Talk to us about the power of a mastermind. Why should people consider joining a mastermind?
Yeah, the principle itself is the only way to gain power. I'm going to say that again. The principle of mastermind is the only way to gain power. There is no other way. And so here's what I mean. The definition of a mastermind is the collaboration of 2 or more minds that are in definiteness of purpose. They're working towards the same thing and they're working in harmony. Okay. The team inside of your business, the mastermind that you're a part of of other entrepreneurs, the church that you go to, your family, your wife and your children, all of these are masterminds. Okay. And they will either produce agitation of thought, which then produces additional power, or it won't. and it will be in not harmony and lack of unity, and it will be destructive. And so it's either one or the other. And the only way to really gain success is through power. And it doesn't mean success just financially, but to have influence and impact, which is really what kings like you and I talk about. What's the ripple effect? I need power. And that doesn't mean that I need power to be able to lord over people. I need power to be able to influence. Okay. And power is established by one principle and one principle only, and that is through the mastermind, which is, again, the collaboration of two or more minds working together in harmony or unity towards a definite purpose. So you can look at Andrew Carnegie, you can look at Henry Ford, you can look at Bronson Hill. All of their success has come from the collaboration of two or more minds working together in unity towards a definite purpose. Or their lack of success or power has come from not working in unity or harmony. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So why should they join? Well, it's the only way to gain power. And there's all kinds of masterminds. There's masterminds for real estate. There's masterminds for individual industry specific. Our mastermind is not industry specific. It's more, how do I, like we talk about living the exceptional life. It's not just about winning in business and money. It's about marriage and family. It's about health and finance, or health and fitness. It's about, faith, all these elements in business or in life. I want to win. That's how I live the exceptional life, is I want to win in all of them. And I actually believe that I can. And I want to be around other people that bring that energy to the room. Because even if I don't learn anything, just stepping into that room, bro, it's different.
Yeah. It's amazing too. Like most people that are in masterminds, I mean, the concept of it is, yes, we put our minds together, we get more from it, but also there's usually a cost, and there's usually a high cost to be a part of a mastermind. But what happens is you get people that are very serious. They're like, what do I need to do to like change my life and grow and do, and you get around that, and it can just absolutely change everything. So I think, even there's that quote by Jim Rohn, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you're like most people generally, and probably like your family or my family or friends we grew up with, whatever, like, there's a lot of negativity, and there's a lot of people that are not positive, and there's a lot of challenges with it. So I think when you get yourself in the room, it does really change. And I have even think too, for people that are not business people or don't have a business or retired, just being at a place of growth is so good for our health. It's so good for our mind, and it's so good. And it's good for our kids because they see us growing. And so we're either growing or we're dying. And so I think if you're not growing your mind, you're not growing your network, you're not developing your body, those areas are kind of decaying. And so I want to be somebody who continually, like, I get better every year. Right. And I know that's kind of your heart as well.
One quick thing I want to add there is just as an entrepreneur, investor, real estate investor, like all of these things that make us so different than everybody else, that just kind of like start separating us and separating us and separating us. If you don't take proactive action towards finding other people like you have, and you're part of a couple of groups, if you don't take those actions, then inevitably you'll just start making decisions by yourself. You already make decisions by yourself, but then it's exaggerated because you're making really high level, high performing decisions that affect a lot of people. And it's like really exciting because this is like who you are and who you're made to be. But you do that long enough, and the weight of the crown, as we call it, just gets heavy. And there's isolation, there's emotional, like mental health, there's depression, there's even suicide. Like you look up the numbers on some of this, investor, real estate, or sorry, not real estate, but entrepreneur stats. Like it's like people are stressed. Why is that? Well, because they're by themselves and they're having all this weight of what they're carrying. They got their family, their legacy. They got investors that they've taken money from, like all this stuff. And it's like, well, I got to perform. There's a lot of pressure. You need other people around you that can help you carry the weight of that crown.
Absolutely, man. No, that's a really good point. We're kind of getting toward the end here. I just want to ask you, what's one piece of advice? I know you shared some great nuggets here. But if someone is looking to grow or scale a business, or even just grow themselves, besides what you already shared, is there anything else that you'd recommend? Or it could be a book or something that, this has been something that's been powerful and it's changed my life. Any other advice you'd have for people?
Yeah, I would just say, apply the word humility to everything. And that sounds like kind of like a cheesy piece of advice. So maybe I'll give a little context to that. But I just think that if you have a perspective of desire and growth, like I'm not done yet. We use the phrase inside Gathering the Kings, grateful, but not done. If I'm grateful for where I'm at, then I can look back in a healthy perspective and reflect and be be grateful and for my family and the achievements that I have and the people that I've impacted and all that's good. Like I can find joy in what has already happened. But if I have a growth mindset, then I'm always going to look for the next deal. I'm always still up the mountain headed, right? This is a beautiful site. This is a beautiful view. I'm glad we are where we are, but the top is that way. And so if you don't reflect backwards and you're not grateful, you don't have humility, then you're always looking forward. You're never appreciative. You never can enjoy the moment. You're never present. Your wife has no idea where you are, even though you might be sitting right in front of her, type of thing. And so it's got to be both. It's got to be grateful and not done. And which, in my opinion, is just humility.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I just want to really appreciate you. You are just from where the place you're coming from, what I've known about you, man. You're just a guy of character, really loves people, really wants to make a difference in the world. And I just encourage everyone to reach out to you and connect with your podcast, the Gathering the Kings podcast, as well as your mastermind. How can people get in touch with you and follow what you're doing, Chaz?
Yeah, I appreciate that. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube. Of course, Gathering the Kings has a podcast. And I just try to keep up with you, but they can also go to gatheringthekings.com, find out more about what we're doing with the group. We've got folks in all different types of industries. We're just trying to win in all areas and live the exceptional life.
That's awesome, man. Cool, brother. Well, thanks so much again. We'll have to have you back again in the future. And I know you're in Kansas City. I'd love to get out and see you and kind of see what you're doing there as well, but appreciate you. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Appreciate you having me. It was an honor. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Boy, I love that interview with Chaz Wolfe. He is quite a guy. You can tell he's coming from a great spot. I just want to encourage you, if you have limiting beliefs, if you journal, if you write things down, if you share with friends, you do therapy, whatever you do, go to personal development stuff, it's all good because it helps you to grow. It helps you to reflect. And again, if you just simply take action toward your goal, and then as you take action, you periodically reflect, is this really working? Is this really what I want? Well, maybe I need to shift here. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe be open to this opportunity. Then things can work well. And it works in your investing as well. You should reflect on which of your investments have worked out well, or what has worked out well. Why? What did you learn from that? What didn't work out? And learn from all of those things, because that will really help you to grow. And the second thing is really just being in the room with amazing people. You can pay to be in the room through a mastermind. You can create your own mastermind. You can have a group of people that are friends. You get together a certain night. I was just with a friend actually in New Zealand recently, and he's got every Friday night, he gets together a bunch of guys and they just talk about real estate and they have a drink. And like, that's his, like, it's like a mastermind. They get together and they talk and they catch up, right? It's amazing. So I think all those things are good. So love to know what you got out of this. You can share this episode. You can post something in the video below. If it's a podcast, you can, please write a review. We'd love to hear from you. If you haven't checked out my new book, Fire Yourself, it's right here. How to replace your working income with passive income in 3 years or less. Getting great feedback on that. Really excited people are sharing that. So love to hear your feedback. Have you get a hold of that as well. There should be a link in the comments or the comments of the show notes below. So thanks for taking the time to educate yourself. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Mailbox Money Show. You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to bronsonequity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.